Well, hello, everybody. It is back to World War II TV for the first of three shows today about the Falaise Gap, or the Falaise Pocket. And we're starting in the town of Falaise. And joining me today for the first show is my friend, the historian and battlefield guide, Sean Claxton. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning. Morning, everyone.
And out on the sites are the dream team, Duncan and Magali, filming in the lovely, sunny and not too hot Falaise today. So it's all looking good. So we're not going to do much of introduction on this show because it's going to be a short one, this one, about 30 minutes, because we're going to give the camera teams time to drive on down to Saint-Lambert-sur-Dee for the second show. So it's got short and sweet, this one. I'll start with a short introduction. And basically, Falaise... the liberation of Falaise follows operations Totalize and Tractable. And I'll share an image of one of the maps I got ready. And essentially, the Allies are coming in from the north. So this is an image showing Falaise at the bottom of the screen image there. And you've got all these arrows coming down. It's 4th Canadian Armoured Brigade, 2nd Canadian Armoured Brigade, the Polish Armoured, blah, blah, blah. They're all moving their way down north. And the Magali's camera is on this road that comes into Falaise from the north, and she's about here on the map there. And you know, we'll leave it at that. These events happened 76 years ago, a week ago. So we'll start with explaining the background and stories of a couple of the somewhat famous photos taken in the town of Falaise during its liberation. We're going to start with this image, and then I will have Sean explain the background behind this image. So just bear with me while I find it. So it should be coming up on your screens very shortly. So Sean, what's going on in that photo there? What have we got in the bottom left-hand corner?
Okay, so that's a 75mm anti-tank gun, Pak 40. It belonged to the 12th SS Division, and it was one of two they had, which formed the strongest defences of Falaise. There was a battle group under a fellow called Bernard Krause, who was given the task of defending the town for as long as possible, basically. He had approximately 150 men. He had two of those 75mm guns. He had attached to him two Tiger 1s from the 102nd SS Heavy Tank Battalion. And his job was to delay as long as possible the Allied move in from the north and from the northwest. Can you go back to that map just quickly?
I can indeed. Should be there now.
Yeah, so you've got the town of Falaise at the bottom, and then about 3 kilometers north is the town of Aubigny.
Yeah.
Okay. About halfway down between the two is a crossroads. You got the crossroads, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where the Tigers were initially, with a small kind of infantry force, so they were the kind of first elements of the defence to be engaged by the Canadian 6th Brigade, who were given the task of securing the town of Falaise. In contrast to the 150 or so men with the Kampfgruppe of Krause, the 6th Canadian Infantry Brigade, part of 2nd Division, you had 3 battalions of infantry, averaging about 600 men each. You had 2 squadrons of tanks from the Sherbrooke Fusiliers, with their reserves altogether 24 Sherman tanks. They have attached or in support an anti-tank regiment and 3 field regiments. So you're talking approximately 70 25-pounder guns in support of the Canadian attack, which was scheduled for the 16th of August, 1944.
So Mag is now in the exact location where that 75mm was taken. If you can step just back a little bit, Mag, so we can see the side of the house. Brilliant. And I'll share the photo again so you can just see we're in the ground drops off very dramatically to the left there, which you can't kind of see in the photo, but there's the photo again. And so that is the road coming into Falaise from the north. And in fact, those buildings on the right there are a few of the buildings that actually sort of survived, because the bombardment was pretty terrible of Falaise, and a lot of the town had to be rebuilt after all. But that sort of string of houses there seemed to have, despite some damage, the roof survived fairly well. So tell us about the action that happened in that street there, Sean, while Mag is standing there giving us the view.
Okay, so the initial attack against Falaise had been scheduled for 1 o'clock in the afternoon of the 1300 on the 16th of August. Due to traffic jams and other delays, that was put back till 3 o'clock And the two infantry battalions, you had the South Saskatchewan Regiment coming in the road we're looking at now, and then the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders of Canada coming in from over to the right as the camera's looking, so coming in from the west of the town. And so they had Shermans in support from the Sherbrookes. And two of the Shermans had been knocked out by the Tigers at Aubigny, the crossroads you mentioned earlier. In terms of the anti-tank defences here, as well as the anti-tank gun, you had another one about 200-300 yards further back, facing the other direction, the other side of the church. We'll probably see in a little while. And then if Mag can sort of swing round to look northwards,
to the left, Mag, swing round to the left.
Right, either way, full 180,
full round all the way round to the other ray coming in.
Perfect.
Yep.
Down the road a bit, they had a barbed wire entanglement, which is, as a physical obstruction, more for the infantry and the tanks, of course. But of course, it would slow things down. And then there were machine gun teams attached to the anti-tank guns as well. And we actually have there's an account from one of the German. I'll move my coffee out of the way. One of the Germans who was part of the anti-tank gun team is a guy called Heinrich Bassenauer. And he described how to the left and the right of the road, from the orchards above, the Canadians were closing in. The machine gunner of our anti-tank gun aimed effective fire on the enemy. He then changed position and was badly wounded by action on the top floor of a carpenter's shop next to the bridge at the city wall. So if Mag could swing round again to the left, you'll see the old city wall.
Yeah, we should go around
which
to
is the old medieval city. And it's built just city side of the River Ont, the water of which you can see.
Round a bit more, Mag. Just round a bit more, Mag, so we can see the wall.
See some old sort of medieval fortifications in a second. Yeah,
there we go. There. That's it. Perfect.
So that's the old city wall. Where was it? Yeah, next to the bridge at the city wall. So from there, he said, I had a good field of fire and could effectively fight the attackers. The first Canadian tank showed up from behind a bend in the street. It was knocked out by anti-tank gun. My machine gun nest was spotted by the enemy, and I changed position. On the way, a shell hit the gable of the house, and I was wounded by shrapnel. Or I was carried out of position. Roddenführer Maraun, the commander of anti-tank gun, was brought to the main dressing station about half an hour later, suffering from severe headwind. With his voice rattling and breaking, he asked to report to the company chief and confirmed that he'd knocked out 3 enemy tanks. The Canadian account suggests that the Germans blew up the gun as well before retreating. The commander actually of the South Saskatchewan is Lieutenant Colonel Clift. His force had been sort of bogged down by this machine gun and anti-tank fire, so he personally went forward, and by his account, he grabbed a rifle off one of his men and just started picking off Germans. Got 3 before the advance continued. So that's the brief story behind the photograph there.
And this is we've done this in other shows. It's this, we knew the Allies numerically are superior to the German forces, and yet when they're defending like this, they can still take quite a few of ours with them before they lose control. Even though they can't possibly hold the town, they haven't got enough strength to hold it. They can still make sure that as they go down, they take Allied tanks and crews with them. And Mag is showing us one of the first of several shots we're going to have of the destruction of the town after the war. And just as a side note, there's a museum in Falaise about the civilian experience in Normandy in World War II. It covers the civilians all across the Basse Normandy and the rebuilding and the rehoming and things like that. Definitely worth going to if you're down in Falaise. So that story there, the anti-tank gun, that's our first famous image. And then we're going to switch to Duncan soon. Thank you very much. Oh, while you're just show us across to the castle there, Mag, if you can. This Falaise, of course, has its famous castle going, dating back to the era of William the Conqueror and what have you. And this, we're not quite at the right angle, but while we're there, I'll show you a couple of photos of the castle at the time of the battle. This is the first one here showing it's been damaged around the top, and you can see damage to buildings around it from the bombing. And there's a second shot from a bit of moving footage, which I'll get to in a second, which is this one there, which you can show the castle there and that rounded turret to the right there. And this is from footage from the time. You can see there's smoke and fire and bomb damage going on while that bit of footage was being taken. So I'll just show you, though that's not the angle we can see. The castle was right in the middle of the town and right involved in the fighting. And there's Mag looking across to the castle there across the river. So thanks, Mag. I think you can start heading back up into the town towards the church now, and we'll switch to Duncan for for the next story. So thank you, Mag. Brilliant work. So we'll put Duncan on, and Duncan is in, well, hold that view there, Duncan. That is perfect. So we're in a little kind of side road, Rue des Prémontres in Falaise. And I'll just show you an aerial photo that Sean, in fact, sent me this morning. So I'm grateful to Sean for sending this. Taken August the 13th. Is that right, Sean?
That's right, yeah.
So you can see the damage already, even though the attack, the actual assault hasn't taken place yet, and yet the town is already severely bombed. So there up in the left-hand corner is the Pack 40. There's a road coming in from the north. So the Pack 40 is there where Mag is. We'll be going to church later on. And Duncan is over here in this area where Rue des Prémontres links up with Rue Saint-Jean here. There's little crossroads here. And there's the old railway station then, which is now a Carrefour. It's a supermarket now. And there was a school here. And I'll show a photo of the school while Sean gives the background of the school and what happened in this street. So I'll show a wartime photo of pre-war photo of this school. This is l'École Primaire Supérieure des Filles. So why are we talking about a pre-war girls' school, Sean?
Well, basically, if you imagine during the 16th of August, things don't start till late. Always on mid-afternoon, so 3 o'clock. So as the Canadians are pushing into the town, time's ticking on, and it's not June. So in August, of course, it's getting dark a little bit earlier. So by nightfall, things are getting a bit tricky. And one of the problems, can you just go back to the aerial picture just quickly? Sorry.
Okay.
There was a raid on the 12th, 13th of August, 144 bombers, which did most of that. I don't know if you can zoom in on the town centre bit there. If you imagine trying to drive tanks through that in the dark, it's not ideal. The town itself actually been hit on the 7th of June for the first time, and then successive raids. Just as the locals, of course, they're totally bemused because they think that the Germans are going to be the only target. Because there are no Germans in Falaise, they say, why the hell are they bombing us? But of course, it's the infrastructure and it's the road network that's the
road network. Rather than the usual, the same old. We've said it in so many shows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the Canadians are pushing in. The Germans are kind of falling back, and their pockets being squeezed. And in the end, you had a force of about 40 to 60, probably the latter, about 60 men. Who were holed up in this old girls' school. From their point of view, it's not ideal, but it's more than adequate. It's a big, strong building. It's got thick stone walls. It's in an elevated part of the town, and from the upper floors, you can see across, huge expanses of the town. And it's kind of their Alamo, if you like. So the commander of Count Krauser, Werner Krauser, him and the bulk of his force are still in the means of withdrawing on the early hours of the 17th away from the town, leaving this force of about 60 men, some of whom would have been wounded. There was a fellow called Paul Hinsberger, who said probably around 40 or so weren't wounded and the rest were, but some of the lightly wounded were still kind of able to fight. By this time, the 12th SS Division as a whole, of course, they've been in action since the second day of the invasion. They're in a bad state in terms of the physical state. But their, shall we say, commitment is still there, and they know that they're holding. That's all they can do, just delay the Allies as much as possible and inflict, as you said just now, as much damage as possible. And they chose this place to do that.
Well, that image that Duncan has now, there's that one bit of wall there with the doorway in it, which is about all that's left now of the wall you saw in that photo I just showed you. There is still a school there. It's changed name, but that bit of wall there, see the lip on it on the top, the kind of the I don't know what you call that bit, the revetment bit on the top there, and that's about the only bit you've got. And you can see, I'll share the photo again, or the two photos again, and then Sean can explain what was happening in the two photos, which are taken in sequence. So we're talking this one here. There's that bit of wall you can see with the lip, the sort of shelf bit on the top there. I don't know what you call that in architecturally, but and all these buildings on the left have kind of gone there. The building on the right has been replaced, but these are obviously Sherman tanks pushing up that road there, and you can see there's some smoke and fire and going on inside that in this, and that's the school on the right there. And I'll let Sean carry on. I'll show the other photo, and then we can go back to, this is the one. No, I just did that one. Whoops, hang on. The other one. Where are we? I've lost it now. I can't find the other one now. Where the hell has it gone? Anyway, we'll carry on talking while I try and find the photo.
Yeah, so you have this force holding out in the school, making their presence felt. So the Fusiliers Mont-Royal, who are the kind of reserve battalion of the 6th Brigade, they're given the task of eliminating the threat. Evening of the 17th, they launch an attack, which is repulsed. And then they try again, and eventually, in the early hours of the 18th, about 2 o'clock in the morning, they're finally successful. You had, what was I going to say? Around 100 men from the Fusiliers Mont-Royal. You had the Shermans, as you see in the picture there. They were supported by mortar fire and fire from Bren carriers, so heavy machine gun fire as well. And there's this kind of story that it was only a few men got out. The Canadian histories, I think, refers to 4 men escaping, and when the ruins were overrun, there were nothing but sort of dead and burnt bodies laying around. One of the Germans there was a medic called Paul Hinsberger. He's actually working with a captured Canadian medic, tending the seriously wounded. And there was a truce organised, and it's very strange to think in the middle of all this that they have this ability to organise a truce to evacuate the really badly wounded. And during that truce, he was actually taken prisoner, and he reported that a group of men had drawn lots to report back to division, saying that the men still in the school were going to have this kind of fight to the death last stand. But there was another fellow from the unit, a guy called Karl-Heinz Decker, who said, well, no, actually what happened, when we realized it was futile, the survivors broke out. He said about 18 of them. So roughly half of the men in the school managed to make their escape, although they were all captured later on, within about 24 hours, I think, as well.
Interesting that we again talking about the disparity between the Allied accounts and the German accounts. So often, a lot of our learning comes the Allied accounts, and we read that the Allies knocked out 20 tanks. You read the German account, it's 3 tanks, and the Allies say they captured 2,000, and the German accounts say it's 150. It's the Battle of Britain scores thing. But this location Duncan's at there is one of the few locations where you can match up those photos in a Falaise. Just about, you need to know how to find Rue des Prémondes, and you can find that bit of wall there. But as you can see, that apartment building, even those people like Martin who are watching this, who are avid fans of the After the Battle magazines, even the After the Battle magazines, the now photos are now out of date. The now photos, the buildings in them have now been replaced by new now photos. But you've got that one little bit of wall there. I know Duncan is desperately looking for spang, for bullet holes, and there just isn't any around there. I know if there is, it's all been filled in. It's just Falaise has been rebuilt, and there's some on the church. Don't worry, we'll get to see plenty of spang later on, but there's none there in the village. So anyway, thank you for that account about those photos there, Sean. Anything else you want to talk about in that street there while Duncan is there?
No, just I was going to say the narrative, if you like, of the suicidal last stand kind of fits the image if that's been formed at the time, not so much since as well, but of these fanatical teenagers who are going to give their lives no matter what. Say it's often best to look at more than one.
Well, there's also that account I've read in French, saying that there were also French kids in there who were SS volunteers fighting, and you think, well, where did that story come from? But these things, they grow, and a little bit of information becomes something, and you start. And I read that one before, and I thought, where does that come from? And it was like 11 and 12-year-old French kids in there, and you go, no, you've taken the word school and you've taken the word youth and you've made your own narrative out of that. But yeah, that's brilliant stuff, Duncan. So I guess you can start heading off back towards the main part of town now. Thank you very much. Brilliant work. And as you can see, while Duncan's walking, I'll put it on Mag's feed in a minute. There's not a lot to see around these streets now. We've walked these streets. It's been rebuilt. It's been repaired. It's a modern, thriving town. But Mag is back in the main part of town. This is the church, the Église de Falaise. There's 2 or 3 churches in the town. This is the biggest one. And there's some information panels about the war there. You said earlier, Sean, that the Germans were never trying to hold Falaise. They're just trying to make life difficult for Allies, buy some time to hopefully escape out of the area and make a stand somewhere else, leading us up to our next show in a couple hours' time from Saint-Lambert-sur-Dive. But Yeah, you know more about the German accounts than I do, Sean. But I wonder to myself, when you're part of 150 guys trying to stay in a town like that, how you really find your motivation for doing so when you know how much is coming down the road, how many artillery pieces are firing at you, how you kind of keep going in all that. And do you have any conclusions about that? Where do you how do you command people in those situations?
Okay, so I don't want to equate the two forces because they're two completely different. But if you look at John Frost at Allen Bridge, it's a similar thing. It's futile, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they still fight. They still carry on. I mean, it's their job, really. And also, if you imagine, say, the most of the enlisted men of the 12th SS Division were born in 1926. So from the age of 17 or 18, I mean, they've known pretty much nothing but Nazism. So they have that level of commitment. They're all volunteers as well. And also they've been in action now, say, since the beginning of the invasion. So they have some experience. And it's their job, and they know that. It's the same as any kind of last stand holding out type thing. Throughout history, the men involved must have known this is pretty stupid or pretty futile, in terms of their chances of survival.
Yeah.
But they're still buying time for other people, I guess.
Yeah, and Mag is showing they've only been there a couple of years, these information panels. I remember going there years ago, and there's really nothing in Falaise at all about the war, and there still isn't in some towns. Notably, Mortain doesn't have very much about the war. Caen, in fact, doesn't have particularly anything in there about the war. But Falaise has seemed to have embraced a bit more recently the images of the town, and there are a lot of images of the church as well. So I'm going to show a couple there. If you can pan around, Mag, towards the kind of the square, the opposite the church, and I'll show the audience, the viewers, some photos. You can pan around the other side, just kind of hold that view over there. If you actually go down a bit so you can see across the square, well, that you can see as Mag's walking there. This is all post-war reconstruction, but I'll show a couple of images I have that I got ready for this, and then I'll show you some images of the church. So this is this first one is of the square before the war. It reminds me of those places almost in North France or in Belgium, like the Ypres, those sort of tall buildings with sort of turrets and very angled roofs. That's very much how it was before the war. And then here's the same view after the battle. You can see, I'll just flick between the images there. There's, see the fountain there in the middle? It's not quite the same. It's a fountain, there's a memorial there. And then afterwards, the buildings behind it have just been gone. There's an Allied sign, an Allied transport sign saying Caen there. And this is the square. So Mag is over in the middle of the photo there, facing where the camera person is standing. And this is obviously sometime after, probably 1946, something like that, when they're reconstructing the area. And you sort of had to go down a long way to dig everything out, new foundations. So, we talked about in other shows, this idea we must always never forget how the rebuilding for the French, the Allies have moved on and gone home by 45. The Germans have kind of gone home or in the prisoner of war camps, but the French had to keep on building for at least a decade after the fighting was over. So that's the area now. If Mag, you can pan around back to the church again, show the church there. I'll show some photos of the church, and then I'll let Sean say some more. So there's a church, and it is common that the churches seem to survive quite well. They were big, sturdy stone, and also the French made a big effort to repair them after war. But when Duncan gets there soon, Duncan is racing down to get his bullet holes. He's got a couple of minutes walk before he gets there. But I'll show a couple of photos of the church. Here's an aerial photo. So Mag is standing in a bit of grass where there's the road is slightly different now, but Mag is down in the bottom of the photo there, and you can see around the church, all the roofs are gone. And the church is damaged as well, but not quite as badly as the buildings around it. And there's several photos. That's a famous one. You see it in all the books of the bulldozer there clearing rubble away on those steps. Mag will show us those steps again in a second. And you can see the same square openings in the wall of the church today. There's probably sometime at the end of 44. There's rubble still there, but there's now a working roadway. There's still another fountain in front of it there. And they've started work, I think, on the church. And then this next one is, again, sometime later. The rubble has gone now, and they're now building, and it's now becoming as it was. And then another shot from the from wartime footage of the fountain and the church again. But I'll get back to Mag's live feed, because that's what we're all here for, the live images rather than these black and white images you can find on Google. So there's those steps Mag is showing there. And Duncan, I'll put on Duncan's feed as well. I'll put for a second, hang on, because Duncan is moving down the street. So Duncan is approaching the church from the city center there, and Duncan will be the one to find the bullet holes, I guess. So anything else with regards to that defense of the town? You say that quite some of the Germans did escape, although they were captured later on. So how does that lead to what we're going to be talking about later on in our next show with David O'Keefe? How does the seizing of Falaise on the 16th, 17th, how does that then influence the next chapter of the Normandy campaign?
Okay, so just to clarify, it is the school defenders, shall I say, that were captured. Most of Kampfgruppe Krause managed to retreat before the last stand at the school.
Right. Okay.
Can you go back to the map, Lou? So at the beginning.
Yeah.
Is that right?
If I didn't close it down, no, there it is. Yep.
No. Yeah. There you go. So again, it's infrastructure. You can see the Falaise is the typical middle of a spider's web with all the roads. So by securing it, you're denying those routes to the Germans, but allowing your own side to use. And once the rubble's been cleared out of the way, and if you imagine that kind of bulge at the top, just pushing further and further and further south, and southeast as well. That's the northern pincer, isn't it, of the closing of the Falaise pocket. So
they can't go around the Falaise. They have to go through Falaise. They have to take the road network on. So it's so Falaise is an inevitable step. And then after Falaise, there's not much, because the towns get much smaller. Trun, which we'll talk about later on, is a much smaller location than Falaise. And Falaise also, it has to be said, it's the valleys and the hills and the river valley. It's a geographical feature as well, isn't it? As well as being an intersection, it's an intersection within these bumps and elevations.
Well, that's how it gets its name, isn't it? Falaise.
Yeah, Falaise meaning for those who are watching, Falaise means cliff. It is sharp drops.
Yeah, you've got these kind of steep escarpments in some parts of the town.
Yeah, yeah. So both of the guys are getting us bullet holes now. So Duncan and Magali are both getting us spang. I'll let Duncan do the close-ups because he loves doing that. And
just mention about the church quickly.
Yeah, sure, please.
Well, I was going to say, it was started in 1066. So you mentioned about how strong they are. It's been there almost 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And you're right. After the war, the cultural sites were given a little bit of priority over kind of in terms of restoration. And that the town itself, the town centre, about 70 to 80% was destroyed, and the population of Falaise dropped to 1,000 between immediately pre-war to immediately post-war. 1,000 people. Wow. Some of it would have been, just left because they had no homes. But between, some estimates say 400 or so, the civilians were killed, which is almost 10% of the population.
Yeah, no, and all absolutely worth mentioning. I think we're doing quite a good job in these shows getting across the French point of view because of our account of the fact we live here and we live amongst the French, and I think they get overlooked a lot in the battle there. And so there's plenty of spang there on the church walls. So we're going to kind of bring this show to an end fairly soon, because it was always intended to be a sort of short one while they're on their way down to the gap itself. And for those watching, the Falaise Gap is kind of a misnomer, really, in that the gap, actually, the pocket the Germans are trying to escape is much further south. It's between Saint-Lambert-Dives and Chambord. How do we think it became the Falaise Gap? I mean, Sean, what's your take on that? Is it just because it's an easy to spell name that everybody knew? Is that what you think?
Yeah, and you look at a map. Most people read top to bottom, and it's the first big town you come to, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll show this map there, the whole pocket, just to set the scene for the later show. So it does, when you look at that map, Falaise seems to be kind of a critical part of it. It's there on the beginning of the bulge there. The red line is a German. So the pocket, as you said, Sean, the British and Canadians coming down from the north, the Americans coming out from the south, and then more British troops pushing from behind from the west there. But the actual escape route, and you see the red arrow there, all ends up near Saint-Lambert and Chambord. But I guess Saint-Lambert-Dives doesn't roll off the tongue quite as easy as Falaise, and maybe it's that whole historical connection, castle, William the Conqueror. I don't know, but the Falaise Gap is what it's become known, or the Falaise Pocket, and I guess the taking of the town of Falaise, the point we're making is it does set into motion the events that then lead to the pocket forming down near Saint-Lambert. So I suppose it sort of fits as a title, but anyway, we've talked about the taking of the town itself, and well, Sean, as usual, your knowledge about the German side of things is incredible, and for those watching and viewing, you know, those accounts of German soldiers, that's the kind of thing Sean brings to the table that perhaps some of the more Allied centric historians don't do, because Sean does spend a lot of time digging through the German archives. Your reading of German's getting quite good now, isn't it, Sean?
It's better than it was.
I mean, mine is absolutely hopeless, so I don't even try. That's why I keep you as a friend, so you can do it all for me. We know our strengths and weaknesses. So if you've got unless you've got anything else you want to say about the town of Falaise, I mean, I think we're going to kind of bring it to an end, really.
No, I mean, not now, obviously, because of what's in place, but I would recommend, if anyone does visit Normandy to see the battlefields, take a half-hour trip down to Falaise and visit the museum dedicated to the civilian victims. It's well worth it, and it's, as you said, it's a side that's not always addressed, and it's a, I say nicely done. It's a strange choice of words, I know. It's a very well done museum and well worth a visit, I would say.
And you just also feel when as soon as you go to somewhere like Falaise or Saint-Lô or Mortain or Villa-Bocage, even, you feel that you're going places that other people don't go. You know, this year has been a very weird one with tourism. Mag was out doing a tour for French people on Thursday, and sites like Pointe du Hoc were absolutely packed. In fact, she couldn't park at all on Omaha Beach. And so that is how it's going. Everyone is going those same half a dozen sites: Omaha Beach, Pegasus Bridge. We've done it all before, Sam Wrigley's. And as soon as you get to Falaise or somewhere like that, you feel that you're going something a little bit off-piste, to use a skiing term. So there we are. That's it. That's the bullet holes there. So thanks, camera team. You've done an incredible job. The connection was good. I'll let you go and have your lunch, and then we convene everybody. That includes you, audience, in 2 hours' time when David O'Keefe joins me for the Saint-Lambert-Dive show. That'll be longer. That'll be an hour or so. And then we have another show at 4 p.m. with Jenny Grant about the Poles on Hill 262. And at the end of that show, I'm inviting both Sean and David, so the previous two historians, to come back on at the end for a kind of a roundup and a conclusion of the Falaise pocket, so we can have 4 talking heads when the camera teams are making their way back to Bayeux. So again, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Keep tuned. And in 2 hours' time, we'll see you all again for another show. So thank you, Sean. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you, Magali. And we'll see you all soon. So Paul Woodadge will join you again in 2 hours' time. Thank you very much for watching. Right. So that was good. Yeah, good.